This is Mrs. Fraser, and in this video we are going to be doing numbers 1 through 6 in your test review. Okay, so starting with comparing and ordering, Betsy decides to use ribbons of different lengths to help decorate the girls' basketball lockers. She cuts ribbon in lengths of 2.3 inches, 1.5 squared inches, square root of 10 inches, 1 3/4 inches, 4 inches long. If she tapes them to the locker from shortest to longest, in which order would she tape the ribbons? Okay, so I'm going to use a number line to help me. So I can see that my numbers are, looks like mainly between 1 and 5. So I'm going to make a number line. And just to be safe, I'll start my number line at 0, and I'm going to end my number line at 5. And then I'm going to start placing things where I know they go. Well, I know I'm going to have 1, 2, 3, and 4 in my number line. And so one of the numbers I already have is 4. So that helps. And then I have 1 and 3/4, which I know, here's my 1.5 mark. And I know that 1 and 3/4 then would go right here. So I'm going to write 1 and 3/4 here. And now I have some other ones. Now 2.3 I know is going to be pretty close to 2, so I'll go ahead and put 2.3 right here. And 1.5 squared and square root of 10, I'm not real sure about. So I'm going to use my calculator, and I'm going to do 1.5 squared, and I get 2.25. So I can see 2.25. I'm going to add a 0 to this 2.30 so that they're the same length. That helps me see. So now 2.3 is the same as 2.30. I can see 2.25 now is smaller than that. So I'm going to put that right here. Okay. And now I need to do square root of 10 in my calculator. And I get 3.16. So that's going to be going really close there. And I'm going to write square root of 10. All right, so now I have all my numbers. So I'm going to go ahead and order these. It says I want them from shortest to longest. So let's see, what's the first number that I have? Well, it looks like 1 and 3/4 is the first. The next one that I come to that I've labeled is 2.25, which was the 1.5 squared. And then was the 2.3, and then square root of 10, and 4. Okay, so number 2, order the following numbers in order from greatest to least. Let's look at what some of these numbers are. Let's see, it looks like that most of these numbers are between 0 and 4. So I'm going to make my number line again. And I'm going to make my number line between 0 and 4. And in there, I'm going to have 1, 2, and 3. And I'm going to start placing numbers that I already know. And actually, I need to really fix this. I said it's between 0 and 4, but really, I missed all those negative numbers. So let me fix my number line. Okay, so let's place 0. And it looks like I've got -3. Okay, so let's say -4. And then it looks like the biggest positive number I have should be less than 4, but I'm kind of guessing here, so I might have to make some changes. -1, -2, -3. and 1, 2, 3. Okay, so fixing that. Okay, so here we are, and we're going to order these. So now I can put -3 where it belongs, right here. I can put 2 and 2/3 where it belongs. Well, 2 and 2/3. I might need to put the 2/3 into my calculator. So I want to know what 2/3 is. I might need to do 2 divided by 3 in my calculator, which gives me 0.6 repeating. So this is like 2.6. So I'm going to put that about here. Oops. Let's write it as 2 and 2/3 so we don't forget. 2 and 2/3. Okay, so we've done that one, and now 220%, remember percents are based out of 100, so in my calculator I can do 220 divided by 100, and I get 2.2. So 2.2 I know is going to be less than that 2.6. So I'm going to put that here, so 220%. Square root of 12, I need to type square root of 12 into my calculator. And I get 3.46. So a little less than 3.5 is my square root of 12. And then negative pi. So negative pi, I know pi is normally around 3.14, but it continues. But it's a negative. So it's between -3 and -4. So I'm going to put negative pi right in here. No, it becomes between -3 and -4. Okay, so I went from greatest to least. So I don't want to read it from left to right, but I want to read it from right to left. So I'm going to rewrite these now in greatest to least. So my greatest one was square root of 12. Next was 2 and 2/3. Then 220%. Then -3. And then negative pi. Number 3, graph the numbers -0.2, 7/10, -1, square root of 2, and -4 on the line below. Okay, so -0.2, I know goes between 0 and -1. 7/10 is between 0 and 1, but closer to 1. I could also change that to a decimal in my calculator, which would be 0.7. -1, we know, goes right here. Square root of 2, I might need to type that into my calculator. I get 1.4 square root of 2. And then -4, which is already here for me. So if I were to order these from least to greatest, I would have them on my number line right here. So that would be easy for me to do from there. Okay, moving on to classifying numbers, number 4, 5, and 6. So number 4, use the real numbers chart below to classify each number by writing it in the correct place. Remember to put the number in the smallest category possible. So what that means is if it's a real number, but it's also rational, and it's also an integer, it's also a whole number, I want to put it in the smallest one it fits in. So we'll talk about that a little bit. So first, let's talk about square root of 25. I always want to simplify before I place. So the square root of 25, I can either put it in my calculator or I can know that it's 5. So I'm not placing the square root of 25, I'm placing 5. Well, I know 5 is a real number because all numbers we have learned about are real numbers. I know it's a rational number because it terminates and can be written as a fraction, 5 over 1. I know it's an integer because it is a whole number. I know it's a whole number. And I also know it's a natural number. A natural number is a number that we count with. So I'm going to place 5 right here in my natural number category. Or, I'm sorry, square root of 25. Let me erase that. Put square root of 25 there. Square root of 25. Okay, -3. -3 I know is a real number, it's a rational number, and it's an integer, but it's not a whole number. It's not a whole number because of that negative. So I'm going to place that in integers. 0. 0 is a real number. It's a rational number. It's also an integer. And it's also a whole number, but it's not a natural number. It's not a number we count with. So I'm going to put it in whole numbers. Pi. Pi is a real number, but it is not a rational number because it never terminates. It never ends, and it doesn't repeat in a pattern. So pi is an irrational number. 2/3. 2/3 can also be written as 0.6 repeating. I know it's rational because it's written as a fraction, but it's not an integer, meaning I have decimals that are coming after it. It's not a negative whole number. It's not my whole numbers and their opposites. So 2/3 is going to be in my rational numbers. 34.5% can be written as a fraction, 34.5 over 100. So it must be rational, but it's got this decimal here. It's got this decimal here, and if I were to actually divide this by 100, I'd get 0.034. Or I'm sorry, I'd get 0.345. So it's not an integer. So I'm going to place 34.5% in the rational numbers. 2.45 repeating. Since it's repeating, meaning it's going in a pattern, I could actually write this as a fraction. So this would go in my rational numbers. But it is not an integer, so it's not going to go any further in. And finally, square root of 31. The square root of 31, if I type into my calculator, square root of 131, it's approximately 11.445, and it keeps going on. And in my phone calculator, you can really see how long it keeps going. It goes on and on and on, and our calculator ends it for us, except we actually know, since it's not a perfect square, that we don't know, it doesn't actually ever end. We have to estimate it. So since it doesn't actually ever end and it doesn't repeat in a pattern, it's going to go over here with my irrational numbers. Number 5, the number negative square root of 144 belongs to which subsets of real numbers? Well, first, let's talk about the square root of 144. Now I could type that into my calculator, square root of 144, and I actually get 12, but it has a negative in front of it, so I need to make sure that negative is there. So where would I place negative 12? Well, I know it's a real number, so it is a real number. But I also know it's a rational number, so it's real and rational. So let's get rid of A now that we know it's also rational. So let's go to C. Is it a real number and a rational number and an integer? Yes, it is an integer. But is it a whole and is it a natural? Well, no, it's not a whole and it's not a natural because of this negative in front of it. Really, the most correct answer would be to put integer here It's real, it's rational, and it's an integer. So C is not right, though. So, and it's definitely not irrational. So B would be my best choice. Which list shows the numbers in increasing order? Increasing order. Okay, so if it's going in increasing order, that means I need my smallest to largest, or least to greatest. Okay, so let's talk about which ones we can get rid of. So my smallest is going to include negative. So if I'm not starting with a negative, I know I should be able to get rid of it. And I might go ahead and use a number line for this because I have a hard time with negatives. So this will help me with that. So starting with 0. And it looks like maybe I could go to 2 or 3. Let's do 3. So 1, 2. And then it looks like I could probably go to -3. And let's start placing them where they go so I can get from my smallest to my largest. So -2, okay, I'm just going to use this list to help me. So -2, we know goes here. -0.75 goes between 0 and -1. -0.5 goes between right there between 0 and -1 in the middle. See, and I may have actually accidentally flip-flopped those if I hadn't put them on a number line. And then 1.5 right in the middle of 1 and 2. And square root of 7, I definitely need to type that one in my calculator. So square root of 7 is 2.64 about. So 2.64 would be right here, so square root of 7. So I went from my smallest to my largest, which is funny is I think that the one that we used was actually the correct answer. So let's double check and make sure. Okay, let's start. The first one I see is -2. Okay. The next one I see is -0.75. The next one I see is -0.5. And then 1.5. And then square root of 7. So B would be my answer. Okay, you can go to your next video when it's time for you to do the next sections of your test review.